10 million USD. Right from the smallest investment up to 10 million USD. That's where there is a little less activity than what we would have liked. So the purpose of this discussion today is, generally to talk about the different aspects and talk about different contours, as to what can enable more flow of funds into those areas, and to help us have that conversation. We've got a group of practitioners and very interested parties into this segment. So what we'll do is we'll do a quick round of introductions before we have the deep discussions, talk about their opinion or view of what they see in the sector, and then we will open it out to all of us to share your views, opinions or comments. So to just start off, my name is Abhishek. I work with Caspian, which is an investment management firm which does both equity and debt investments into impact investing sectors. Clean energy is one of the priority sectors for us, both from a debt and equity perspective. I manage the debt business at Caspian. So that's me. I'll request Motushi to talk about her.
Hi, I'm Motushi Sengupta. I work for a private foundation with its headquarters in Chicago, the John D. and Catherine T. Maratha Foundation. So we've been in impact investments in the US for a long time, but have started dabbling with the Indian market for the last couple of years. And there's been some discussion, and I'll speak more about it later. Thank you.
110 crores or about $18 million or so, but I guess in the time I said 18 million, it's probably become 15 million, but that's another story. But we now have a $100 million Series A fund, but it's broader than clean tech this time.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Vikramjit Singh. I'm the country officer for India at IFC. IFC, as most of you would know, is the private sector arm of the World Bank Group. IFC has been investing in India since 1958. We last year we did about $2.6 billion of investments across a range of sectors, in which, of course, renewable energy, electricity access, and climate change were one of our focus areas, and we can sort of discuss this later in detail. Thank you.
Thanks, Vikram. I'm Jayant Prasad, I'm co-founder of Seekers Finance. This is a debt-focused NBFC with the mandate to invest only in sustainable energy, which we define as distributed renewable energy, industrial energy efficiency, and energy access. We're looking at this specific segment because we saw the gap which Abhishek had pointed out, that there was money going into large utility, but there was nothing which was really going into the smaller case sector. We do direct investments with ticket sizes ranging from $100,000 to $2 million, and we facilitate investments up to $8 to $10 million. So that's the gap which we are trying to fulfill. And methodology is primarily around aggregation in case of projects where the project funding mechanisms are known but the size is small, and around figuring out how to lend for segments where people don't know how to lend because there's no examples. So trying to create those underwriting criteria and systems and try and fund them on non-recourse project finance basis.
Hi everyone, my name is Karel Nierop. I'm with Triodos Bank, which is a sustainable bank based out of the Netherlands. We were founded about 30 years ago with, back then, pretty novel idea to focus on more than financial return, but also on the positive impact that a financial institution should have on society. And that's, in the end, proven to be quite well, as every company has now sustainability embedded in its core principles. We've grown as a bank. Renewable energy has always been a core focus of the bank. We also have investment funds which go beyond Europe. But 30 years ago, we actually started investing in renewable energy. We were really a first mover when windmills were about the size of myself, and I'm a tall guy, but not the size of windmills right now. Right now, I mean, they've been wingspans in the size of Boeings, and that's about the growth that we've seen as well in our investment portfolio. We manage now about 2 billion euros in renewable energy projects and companies, about 400 projects and companies worldwide. We're not the biggest in terms of volume as an investor, but we are the biggest in terms of number of deals that we do each year. Still, our exposure in India, which is over 100 million, is mostly in financial inclusion and not so much into clean energy. Yeah, he will also talk today on why it is and how we think we can improve that.
Hi everyone, my name is Anna. I represent Challenger 88, which is a firm that advises family offices and foundations to get into impact investing. These are predominantly European and Australian families, and we are creating sort of boutique portfolios for first-time LPs getting into impact investing. We then, once the investment is done, then we work, we're pretty hands-on in terms of our portfolio management support to the investees, which can be startups or funds. We're flexible in terms of the instrument, so we can do equity or debt. Given that we're working with European clients, climate financing is a theme that keeps coming up over and over again. And that's how I sort of reached out to Shyam to ask him where we can advise families to put their money in, and that sort of led to a very long conversation. Essentially looking to find interesting opportunities to invest in. The check size being in the range of 1 million to up to 5 million. And we usually do syndicate deals and co-investments, looking to partner with other investors here.
Thanks, Anya. What I would suggest, if you don't mind, what I would want to do is just go around asking the lead discussants about their views, and then we'll open it up to the group here. The first question to you, Vikramji. IFC, possibly the biggest daddy in the town. As far as clean energy efficiency investments is concerned, and as far as your India strategy is concerned, can you give us a little bit? We know you do a lot of things, but can you give us a little bit flavor of what your focus is on? What are you thinking from a strategic perspective? What is your smallest investment? What is the some of the key investments that you've done last year, and what do you think about this segment?
Thank you. Right. So IFC is very keen on the renewable energy, the clean energy segment in India, and for the sector it has a multi-pronged strategy because we think there are many levers that can get things working. We of course do direct investments, and there we work across the entire scale. Biggest investment last year was in Reva, where we did the $437 million investment to 3 other bidders. But on the other side, we also invested in lithium, which is where we did an $8 million investment, and lithium is a company that provides fleet management services through electric vehicles to large corporates in India. But in addition to that, we have an advisory team which helped, which was a transaction advisor to the Reva investment, and that experience helped them. We are now working with the government of India to help standardize the bidding document for large solar parks and also rooftop parks across the country. We also pioneered the first utility scale rooftop solar project in 2012 in Gujarat. We also work in the renewable, in the off-grid solutions through our advisory work, through the Lightning Asia program, where we work with microfinance institutions, because we also do a lot of work with microfinance institutions, and we sort of leverage those relationships to sell off-grid electricity solutions, electricity access solutions. So we've done the entire gamut of stuff, but we realize that there are certain areas where it is not possible for us to reach. What you mentioned, the sub 10 million. So of course, we've done it, we work in those areas. But for those areas, we have invested in funds which look at those, and my colleague here is an example of that. We also pioneered India's first clean tech NBFC, Tata Clean Tech, which again does debt and other financing. And overall, if you look at the renewable energy space, we've financed about 15% of them, 13 to 15% of them, the grid connected capacity in India today. And the idea is that going forward, we'll maintain that trajectory. So in the renewable energy space, over the next 5 years, we hope to put in about $1 billion. That is from 2017 to 22, but we put in almost $500 million this year. So we sort of in excess to what we targeted for the 5-year trajectory. In addition to that, on the off-grid solutions and the access, where we also include distribution as a sector, not just off-grid solutions, we hope to put in about $750 million over the next 5 years, 17 to 22. But the caveat there is that part of targets not just off-grid solution. We look at access across both off-grid and grid solutions. So we work with entities like ESL to help the rollout of smart meters and other solutions. So that broadly is what we're trying to do. We remain very committed to both climate change and to clean energy and work in the sector in the future.
So, I mean, are you actively looking at new opportunities for, say, because a lot of the projects that we are talking about here will be significantly smaller size than what your comfort levels are. So since that is not something that you will do day in and day out, are there a lot of funds that you are observing who are coming out and asking you for your support? Like, so for example, we haven't seen another infuse, and that's a question, of course, I'll ask Shyam, but have you seen, we haven't seen any such thing, but have you seen any more clean tech funds coming up to you? Why isn't that not happening?
I would not be the best person to comment, but yes, broadly, I think the trend towards sector-specific funds, not just clean tech, but across various sectors, has come down. We put about, over since 2000, early 2000, we put in about $750 million in the fund space, and we have been in VC funds and small SME focused funds. And our idea is that we continue supporting good management teams, good investment managers across sectors, across themes. Clean tech being one of the themes. We keep looking at funds for a period of time continuously, but it will not be not possible to comment whether we're looking at some stuff right now. But broadly, the theme towards sector-specific funds on the way, not just clean tech, but across others. But I think 5 years back, this was the trend, but for various reasons, and I think we'll be able to find out much more, but it should come on.
That's interesting. And Shyam, this question was waiting for you for a long time. So Shyam happens to be one of the pioneers in the clean tech equity investing space. And Shyam has just set up another new fund, but it is not a clean tech fund. So why is that? And I've seen the kind of companies that you funded out of your first fund, amazing companies. So what has been your experience, and why isn't your second fund infused to rather than Bharat Innovations?
See, I guess, it's an issue with, is venture capital even the right mechanism for early stage clean tech? From our experience over so many years now, even all our team members were clean tech entrepreneurs to begin with, then went into investing. So it's about 15-20 years experience in the partners individually. Now, what we've realized is, one thing is it is capital intensive. There is a science element to the tech which takes longer than 3 to 5 years to develop and evolve. And then, where is your potential exit for these companies? So, if you're trying to sell these companies to utilities or energy companies, they are not generally interested in buying the technology companies and startups. So, and you're talking about bringing in products into an extremely competitive, low margin commodity business. So this is not blue ocean internet companies where you're not really competing with anyone, you're creating a market. That's not the case in clean tech. So when you combine all this, the capital intensiveness, the time duration, the lack of, low margin business, commodity end players, lack of exit opportunities, I'm not surprised there are not many more clean tech funds. I mean, it's only natural. And, the first era of clean tech funds globally, they all lost so much money, it's not even funny. The biggest and the most storied venture capital fund in the entire world, Kleiner Perkins Field and Byers, KPCB, basically killed itself because of clean tech. Because they called it green tech and put I don't know how many billions to work and pretty much the entire thing they wrote off. So, when you start with that, you're talking about the most storied name in Silicon Valley, which is no longer the case. It basically got burnt at the stake of clean tech. And then came a whole bunch of big blow-ups like Solendra, Mia Soleil, Nano Solar, I don't know how many billions went down the tube. So now all of that has burnt the venture capital godfathers in the valley, who basically spearhead all the new trends in investing. So when we set up Clean Tech Fund Infuse, we knew all this had happened. So we set up a model where we were not backing hardcore technology companies that needs hundreds of millions of dollars. We were looking for small bets with $1 million if they can create something sustainable. Because we knew there is no follow-on capital in the market and we were proven true. None of our companies have a single VC follow-on investor. We have had one or two strategics here or there who have come in and helped take the companies forward, but not a single VC in the market came anywhere near our companies and they said it's not a space they want to touch with or vouch for. That's the reality. And I don't blame them. If you had to choose a place to bet your money on to make money, clean tech's not the first and obvious set. So if your returns is your only goal, then that's not the sector you're going to choose. From an early stage venture capital point of view, it's different for a pension fund which is looking for assets to give a steady return. You want to buy a solar farm, wind farm, it's a different story. But venture capital which needs 5 to 10x multiples in a matter of 5 years, clean tech is just not. In my mind, maybe venture capital isn't the right model for the sector whatsoever. That itself means you need a longer gestation, higher capital intensive. You need a different mechanism or maybe a lot more government support kind of model to be able to take this forward.
But are you, in terms of the viability of the businesses that you finance or equity funding, you don't have any issue about the viability of the businesses in terms of at least the initial expectations that you had versus what they finally ended up with?
Very good question, actually. So one realization is, no matter how much you want to wish it to be that you can create a sustainable business for $1 million, in reality our view is that even for business model innovation, not core technology development, you need up to 5 million, something in that range in India to be able to create something really sustainable. Because you need to give the startups some breathing room to make some mistakes. That's how you create new stuff. They're not going to get it right at the first try. Because there's no breathing room when you have only $1 million at play. The first mistake they make, they're dead. So they are complete. So you're talking about entrepreneurs who become so risk-averse. There is no way they'll ever actually get a breakthrough. So whatever they do will be so incremental that it's not going to move the needle anyway. It's basically where you end up.
So interesting. So what you're saying is, in all possibility, what you're proposing is that given that the venture capital model has a 5-7 year kind of time frame in mind, that may not be sufficient for any company in the clean energy space because of the reasons that you're saying, that there is a science element to it.
If you want to talk about tech, if it's actually technology level.
Or a distribution challenge problem, which again needs a slightly longer period to make mistakes, and so larger amount of capital, longer tenor.
And if there is a manufacturing element, if there is a hard tech component to it, that manufacturing and capability to build scale by building capacity needs very strong partners. You need more money, you need proper scaling capability, you need that ecosystem in the country. That's another place where India fails, is that the manufacturing ecosystem is really weak. Is weak beyond description. It's you can't even hold a candle to China. So there's no way. That's the biggest problem, another problem we have in hard tech.
And essentially, and those are the things that kind of made you or forced you to set up the second fund, which was more sector agnostic.
Here, my hope and goal and wish and prayers are that, yes, we have LPs who want full 100% commercial return. That's what our goal is as well. But because we have other sectors which are more momentum sectors like fintech, health tech, and enterprise tech, you have more bets you can place there. But in the process, also maybe along the way, take a couple of bets in the clean tech space. I mean, hopefully mix it up. Because if you have only one sector and you're betting only on that, and you want exits in a 5-year timeline in clean tech, I mean, I'm really beginning to believe maybe it's not the best financing mechanism or model. Maybe there ought to be a better one.
So Motoshi, that's where you hear a equity investor, possibly the ones who have the greatest risk appetite, saying that it may not be the right model. As a foundation who can provide other forms of capital, you've been, I guess, evaluating this specifically for India for some time. What has been your, what are few things that you picked up, and what is your strategy into this?
This is me learning for the day to start. So thanks, Mark. So basically, we started work in this sector a couple of years back. We did a level of exploration in 2015 and spoke to a number of experts at that time, trying to work out what would really keep the action going to keep temperature rise less than 2 degrees Celsius. That was our entry point. And to do that, we sort of hit across a set of areas we said that which needed immediate attention. And following that analysis, we sort of looked at making grants to civil society organizations, but also acknowledge the fact that this is not going to be enough in any way if India is to sort of reach its NDC goals. And so we have started taking baby steps, and Shan has been part of some of those discussions towards making impact investment. So as part of trying to mobilize effort to keep temperature increase to less than 2 degrees Celsius, we said basically that we really need to give a major push to renewables, look at ways by which we can bring in clean tech, bring in energy efficiency, and how can that be actually, how do you build an ecosystem where the private sector is able to play a much bigger role in terms of meeting these climate goals. So in the last 2 years, we've made grants worth more than 40 million now, and to civil society organizations. As far as impact investing is concerned, we have sort of taken a combination of grants and concessional finance to for certain areas, looking at expanding the market. Our impact investing history as a foundation goes back for a pretty long time. In the US, we've been active for quite a long time actually. It comes out of the endowment that MacArthur runs. Part of the endowment is actually directed towards impact investing. In our analysis of the Indian scenario, which largely indicated that there was a huge capital gap as far as the C&I sector is concerned, especially in small scale. And that is where our efforts have been directed in the last couple of years. As I said, we have not made investments as such. We've made a couple of grant investments, and the Climate Policy Initiative, in fact, houses an India Lab for Finance, which is looking at smaller, very early stage enterprises that they provide business development support, and which are sort of taken to funding agencies like OPIC and Tata Clean Tech.
So the grant funding that you would have provided was to run the advisory services, or?
That's right. That's right.
So more like your grant funding is going to more like a market development
Right.
kind of an initiative.
Right.
Is it, I'm not too familiar, but is it within the MacArthur Foundation's strategy to invest into, I've heard you mentioned about giving grants to civil society organizations, but impact investing directly or into funds, has that been considered in the past in other locations?
So we approach impact investing in 2 ways. One is in support of a program strategy. So the climate fund that has been supported, or the work that we are supporting CPI to undertake, is part of our larger strategy on climate deliverables that the foundation has signed up for. We also provide impact investing, as you know, where there are interesting, exciting opportunities where you can bring in a social change with limited amount of financial support, and that is where. So in both ways, we've been making funding available. As I said, in India, is still quite in early stages of engagement. So we have not made any direct contributions to funds as yet, but there are discussions at the moment, some in quite advanced stages. We hope to have at least a couple of interesting investments made public early next year. We're going through the discussions at the moment. We think that there is a huge gap. There is, as a foundation, there is a huge gap that needs support, but also carries a fair amount of risk because there aren't many foundations and philanthropic institutions which are active in that space as yet. One of the things which has happened in the last couple of years, which we are very happy about, is just looking at this very fast acceleration of support that we have seen from other philanthropic institutions coming into this space, trying to provide support behind Government of India's own plans, which has also included developing a market for solar and also renewable energy as such. So we think that we are on the right track. There is a lot that needs to be done, huge gap as of now, but yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and we're also learning as we go ahead.
Thanks for that, Carol. Yes. Triodos has been there in India for quite some time, and everybody, when people heard that you were on the panel, a lot of people asked me that they do a lot of financial institution activity, right? Are they into clean energy? That was an Indian asking. So, and you mentioned that you were one of the pioneers in the clean energy space as far as global markets is concerned. What can get you to do more in India from a clean energy perspective?
Yeah, it's true. What we do beyond Europe in emerging markets, I think 80% of the funding that we provide beyond Europe is in financial inclusion, and that's growing historically. Whereas within Europe, one of the key focus areas has always been renewable energy. And if you then look at both strengths in the organization, so we have knowledge of renewable energy and we have knowledge of emerging markets, logical next steps would be to combine the two. I think what we run up there is that we need to work with the needs that we have. And then, it's not our own money, it's money that we have from investors, institutional and retail investors, mostly from Europe. And then there is some risk perception amongst those investors, which hinders us to do a lot of investments in the space in a fast way. It took us about 2 years to get a mandate in an existing renewable energy fund that we have focused on European project financing, and especially the smaller projects. It took us 2 years to get a mandate for emerging markets, and now that was initially 10% of the fund, now it's grown to 20%, which is a substantial amount of 150 million right now. But then the comment was, yeah, but you can only do senior debt. And then in India, the bigger projects, we are not competitive, which is fine. That's apparently there's no space for international investors there. Although I do think to meet the ambitions that the government had set itself, it also requires international investment. And for the smaller projects, we run up against the situation that transaction costs are get very high to do smaller projects. So you'd like to see a lot more bundling of those projects, but that then requires a lot of capacity work, which we don't have the means to do within our existing infrastructure at this point in time. So that's kind of the project financing side of things, although I think over time, when also risk perception of investors will change, we'll have the ability to do more, but that's a slow progress. Then more on the off-grid and commercial and industrial solar side of things, right, where I see a lot of growth opportunities. Our biggest hindrance, looking at from an internal barrier, is that we don't have any local presence in India. And I think if you want to effectively finance companies, especially through venture capital or equity, but also that you'll need to be locally present to find the companies, to monitor them, and to actually help them scale and go through the growth phase. I think one of the means that we've, or one of the ways that we've sought to mitigate that that barrier is not to set up local offices ourselves, but to very much open ourselves up to finding partnerships in not only India but beyond. Also, if I look here at this event, there's so many people that want to do exactly the same thing, but still we're all looking at it through our own lenses and with our own mandates and business lines and companies. And there's so much room to collaborate a lot more, especially given the huge challenges that we need to fund. And it just amazes me so much that it doesn't happen more. I mean, what we've tried to do, and well, you're aware of this, is set up together with Caspian, which has been a long-term partner for us since 2005. We've set up a joint early-stage equity fund for early-stage SMEs in clean energy and food and agriculture. It's still small, but we hope to grow that. We basically mandated Caspian to manage it for us, given their local team and experience here. And we want to be an active anchor investor and also use our funding network to scale the fund up further. I see a lot of space to do more of that, but also there are a limited amount of successful partnerships that I've seen over time. So that's, and I haven't done a scientific study on why that is, but I think that is one challenge that we should all ask ourselves here to solve and to get together. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, that's a perfect answer. So I think we're starting to hear of some version of solutions here. So somebody who has an international expertise in renewable energy like Karel and Theodos, they were finding it difficult to get into the Indian market. In some sense, what Karel is saying is for an international organization forming collaborations with local entities, so domestic entities in India who possibly have better knowledge and better monitoring capability, collaboration is a better way. But you know, again, it has to be tested whether it can work at scale and things like that. So, and again, between Theodos and Caspian, we also have to see how a clean energy investment really works. We're confident about food and ag, I guess, financial inclusion most certainly, but we don't really know whether clean energy, clean tech, clean energy efficiency will really work. So Jayant, you're one of those focused, and the only focused clean energy NBFC in the country. And you have talked about financing everything from projects to companies and basically giving it a real push that it requires. What has been your experience from when you started? Were there areas that you expected that this should do good and it did not do good? And there are pockets of opportunities that you have seen. What would you, as a local fund manager, say to the LPs from outside?
Sure. Thanks, Abhishek. That's a fairly wide question mandate which you put for me. So we are sort of, for people out here, we are sort of the new kid on the block because we got started last year investing in clean energy. The couple of data points I want to put are maybe one data point, one construct. When we are looking at allocation of funds, right, we heard speak about, if returns is the only objective, you do X, but if you are looking at more than returns, India is one of the largest emitters of greenhouse gases. Over the next 24 years, studies show that the energy demand incremental in India would outstrip any part of the world. So it outstrips China, it will outstrip any other continent or country put together. So therefore, if we do not see solutions, India would continue to create a challenge to the 2-degree goal globally, number one. Second, when we look at the solution landscape, and obviously I highlighted that very well, the solution landscape is not mono. It's not only large utility wind, large utility solar. It's easier to do, therefore a lot of money is going into it. It's like taking a car with 4 tires and trying to put all the pressure in one tire because that's closest to the pump. The other 3 tires are deflated. How will you run the car? When we looked at it, we found there was a market dynamic issue which we wanted to solve. Right? We saw the problem on the equity side, which Ahmed said, but we said let's Infuse backed us. We just said, let's leave that for Shyam to do. I find some amount of bitterness out there and some amount of hope. I hope the hope wins over the bitterness. But when we looked at it, we said the market failure was what I had highlighted. Either the banks and the local debt financing institutions did not know how to fund them, or the projects were too small. So how do you aggregate? So I'm not the only clean energy focused NBFC in India. You have Tata Clean Tech, you have Virida, but they're designed to do large utilities. So we said, can we become a market maker institution focused on funding small projects and trying to crowd in the mainstream lenders too? When we see what we are trying to ask people out here, and before I started this, I used to have one of the largest microfinance desks in the country for a private bank, where I was doing both wholesale and retail microfinance. There is a margin out there. You can borrow at 15 and lend at 25. When you're looking at SME, you can borrow at 20 and lend at 40 and 35. The people who are doing out there. When you're looking at these projects, right, you move a project from a rooftop solar project from large utility to rooftop, the IRR goes up by 100 to 200 basis points. It doesn't go up by 1,500 basis points. How do I then return the equity and the debt if I don't solve for tenure? These need long-term project financing. I can't get a 2-year money. Or I don't solve for the borrowing costs. Right? Abhishek, you yourself, I think Emmanuel had mentioned in the earlier forum, if the cost expectation from the LP is going to be higher than what I can lend to the project at and the project stays viable, then there is no market. Then what we're talking about becomes self-fulfilling. You will see limited action in energy efficiency. As per our INDC, it is supposed to be equivalent to any other intervention. You will see limited intervention in energy access. You have people transitioning, living on biomass and fossil fuel, and they will be transitioning to what? There will be limited action on distributed renewable energy, because you're talking about, I think globally there are many examples of 50-50 split between community-owned or distributed generation and utility-owned or large utility-connected generation. In India, it's barely 10%. So when we're looking at the market solution, we try to put together a way where we can crowd in mainstream local investors. But when we are looking at the LPs who want to help us, you, or any other person who's trying to do this, we need long-term funds which require infra-like returns if you want change in this segment. Else, what will happen is you keep funding more and more working capital, hence sell a few more devices and a few more systems, but you don't do project financing.
Okay, so the verdict is out there, or the message for the LPs in a way is that, things will take longer in this segment. It will potentially not give you as much high returns as you expect out of typical venture capital, but it may give you more predictable and uniform returns, provided the early stage is adequately cushioned. What we've also got a sense of is the traditional venture capital model may not be the vehicle per se. There has to be some kind of a mix of different structures, different kind of collaborations has to work, I guess, to make things work, is what the lead discussants kind of came up with. What I would like to do is, from the rest of us here, see if you have any comments or views or any questions to, what we said. Please. Your name first.
My name is Viraj. I represent Poola. We are a global association of off-grid solar companies. So my question is to Shyam. The kind of companies that you invested in your first fund, what technology was it focused on? Was it solar, wind, since you said renewable energy? The other is if it's solar, within solar, was it, if you could just talk about what kind of technologies or what kind of products these companies are working on.
Yes, so it was a clean tech fund, so it was not about renewables, it was across the space, energy, water, waste, agri, transport. So it had low-cost industrial energy management solutions, for example, it had green chemicals. So we have a probiotic derived green chemicals company which replaces surfactants and degreasants in leather and textile processing, for example. We have a cold chain efficiency solution, really interesting in terms of its potential to drop the cost of offering cold chain. It's a pure tech solution there. Then on the solar side, actually the one investment we made was less on the tech side. It became a project developer. It was a company called Fourth Partner Energy, which recently got invested in by TDG. So we were the single $1 million institutional investor checked in that company. And the next investment was a $80 million investment from TDG after 4 years. So it really took off in a big way, which we are very happy about. But the other tech companies, see, that was the one play, the industrial commercial rooftop solar, where you had a big investor who came in and backed the game. But on green chemicals, cold chain efficiency, e-waste processing, recovering precious metals from electronic waste, low-cost industrial energy management, I mean, the venture capital follow-on wasn't there, and the corporate, there is some corporate interest, but corporates are still looking at the spaces, they're not there to yet, in a big way, to commit money for investing in tech, is what we have seen so far. They're not there yet. I mean, they're still trying to figure out what to do, at least the Indian corporates, which are the ones who are looking at these companies. So it's across the space of clean energy.
Can we make just one comment also? I think there's, or maybe that's my perception, but a tendency to think that the sector is so immature and some technologies have not scaled to the extent that they've actually proven their business model, etc. First of all, I think that's true. There's a lot of proven technology in the space already. And also, it's easy to say that it's not fair to do, but that's life does that sometimes. But the comparison is wrong in terms that the sector is being compared to the fossil fuel industry, but that's probably the most subsidized industry in the entire world. So what first needs to happen is true pricing, and that's been mentioned a couple of times in the opening panels as well, and that's going to take decades probably before the incumbents will allow that. But it is the reality that we're also facing. You're comparing a better technology and probably a cheaper technology with something which is just being held alive and squeezed out until there's no more. And that is, I think, something that can be said out loud much more than it is now. Instead of focusing on the immature phase of the companies that we're now discussing.
If there was an inherent carbon price for a lot of these things, then a whole lot more clean tech solutions would have become far more economical right from the beginning. But that's not, in any case, there. That's the one big problem.
So my name is. So I'm Harish Ahuja. I'm the founder CEO of a company called India Go Solar. It's an e-commerce solar marketplace. And in this ecosystem, we also brought in a platform called FinCredible. It's a fintech, NBFC, AIF kind of platform. I'll not say very similar to Seeker, but because we have a different approach. I agree with Shyam, I agree with Vikramjit, I agree with everyone here, even Carol also. I have a very important question because when we are offering solar financing to our platform customers, because there is a deal flow coming on India Go Solar platform, and we are trying to finance it by using the network of our partners, And we have got multiple revenue streams, from products, from SME financing, from project financing. So the game of IRR becomes bigger here, I really like to know from, let's say, Anna, or like from Carol, or from Jayant, or from Shyam, when you know there's impact investment philosophy here when you invest in that, right? I'd like to know just one question from all of you, are the investors in this space. What kind of post-tax equity IRR would you comfort to invest in that? Can I know just one number in Indian rupee context? I'd like to know from Shyam, or from Vikramji, or from Carol, or from Anna, because she's also supporting the HNI. And let us see if we can make it or not, because you're talking about sub 7-8%. Maybe there are certain models which can give you more than 14% post-tax equity IRR, and we know that model. So it's just an idea for us.
See, in Infuse, we are supposed to be a regular commercial fund. We don't call ourselves impact.
Yes.
And so our investors expect, a venture capital IRR, which is 25%.
25. Okay.
So it's not easy to get in clean tech primarily because of
That
the
is
asset
not a number.
quality.
25%. Vikram, what about you? I have seen. More like,
I will not be able to give a number for the reason that while we don't have, for our equity investments, we don't emphasize the IRR, but yes, we like to have some return. On the debt side, for the funding that we provide usually is market linked, so we don't provide any. So it's very difficult to, and this, we invest across sectors, so it's very difficult.
understood. IFC I think is not the right. What about Carol? Carol, what about you?
Yeah, given the scope of instruments that we use, it also varies what you're focusing on. We're euro-denominated fund. If I compare it to, and then again, the fund which I was referring to, which is now doing project financing in renewable energy, most of that is in Europe, and then 20% of that is in emerging markets. Of the fund, the IRR that's expected. That fund is debt. So if you look at the return that fund is providing to its investors in Europe, that's a fairly low amount. It's about 3%, 4% or something in that return that they're getting. On top of that comes a management fee that we get, which is not that high because it's a big fund. And on top of that, if I translate it to India, will be the currency costs, which we had. So it's also a variable amount in that sense. If we invest in a fund and it's equity, and the fund also deploys equity, I would expect between 10 to 15% IRR on the dollar to come out of it. Because it's usually high risk. Yeah, but again, it's so risk dependent and instrument dependent that your question on putting it on a number is favorite.
What about Anna? What's your answer?
So in different sectors, it would be different things. Yeah, so in other sectors, it would be 25% market rates, but we understand that in climate financing, it has to be a different kind of capital, so it would be in the range of concessional funding 10 to 15%, and those are the kind of HNIs that we want to bring in. It will not actually be HNIs, it will be development agencies that are the ones that are interested. So we understand this requires a different kind of capital. It will not be the traditional HNIs.
Thank you.
Just to add to what about the sector and what Shyam has also started. So like things have changed. What we see. I'm Sachin Jain from Oriana Solar, and earlier if you used to see say TechCrunch or GigaOM and all, so clean tech was a separate segment there, right? And things now have changed to fintech and blockchains, and clean tech has disappeared. There are several reasons what we are discussing, and the IRR's expectations, both from VCs or if you look from an infra fund, is different. Infra funds are looking more in IPPs and larger scale, where lower returns are okay. But if I see from a positive point of view, pretty much in India, if you see the price of, I'm talking from a solar perspective, the price of solar has really come down, and in terms of installations, there could be a good potential if somebody is really able to scale up to the large Indian consumer market. And pretty much if you look at it, just the Indian market segment, we are at right now just 300 gigawatt, 330 gigawatt of power. And if you compare with China, it is more than 2,000 gigawatts. The industries in India, we are supplying power, they are paying 7.5 rupees to 10 rupees. Colleges in various colleges are paying 15 rupees. And the solar power is getting supplied at 2.5 rupees to 3 rupees to 4 rupees. So the potential will be huge, right? It's something where some players can really drive that kind of potential and bring out as, because the consumer market in India is really growing a lot. I guess not just in clean energy, if you just say any other products, right? Fintech, for example, right? Because there's an endless number of, we can drive the amount of financial inclusions there. So just a very brief point, in terms of the potential is out there, challenges are also out there.
Yeah,
I guess
it's upon us to basically figure out how we can address that requirement. One last comment or question from Raj, and with his comment is where we close.
My name is Raj, I am from Indus Impact Investing Group. So, I have just one question. So, biggest challenge, so I meet many of my renewable clients, and biggest challenge they face is the equity funding for their projects, especially the small scale, 10 to 15 megawatts or less than 50 megawatts of projects. So, for that financing, probably the NBFCs like Tata Cleantech or Gen can come in, but the 30% of that equity financing, that is the biggest challenge they face. On the other side, I see the negative yields on European bonds, and if I add some 7 to 8% of currency hedging, and still these projects can give the better returns. So what will it take to mobilize that funding into these of the project financing, and why we haven't been able to do this at large scale till now, and what will it take to do this?
I guess
Equity, so how to source equity into those smaller projects, and then largely also how do we get international funding and also debt funding in these projects. In terms of equity, what I said previously, there's what we're good at in terms of getting funding in is approaching our European network of investors, and we've tried to launch several renewable energy funds, quite skillful renewable energy funds for emerging markets in the past, and basically they didn't go through because of lack of investor interest. They didn't trust the technologies were proven enough to invest in, and also they thought the risk that if you're approaching bigger pension funds, then if they see already emerging markets, then they're already scared. So then you have to come up with quite a convincing story to be able to sell it to them, and those are the institutional parties that we will be looking at to fund this. So that's part of risk perception, because if I'm also asking those parties to then invest equity in small projects in emerging markets, for example in India, that's not gonna fly. So in the end, what you need is first movers that are willing to put capital into development of these type of funds. And we're seeing that process now. It just goes very slow, and especially if you compare it to all the technological developments that are taking place and new business models that are coming up. If you would have a couple of big parties that are actually being able to supply, I don't know, first loss type of tranches to bigger funds, and those launch and those are successful, then the rest will follow. It's as simple as that. But we're not there yet. I don't see that many international renewable energy focused funds that can provide debt, both debt and equity to smaller projects.
Thank you, Carol. Thanks to all the lead discussions and everybody. Thanks for your time, and if there's anything more that you want to talk about, I guess we are around. Thanks a lot.
I request everyone to please head to the closing plan B. Thank you.